Hello and welcome to Trucking Answers. I've been running into some snow lately, and so I wanted to talk about the adverse conditions exception rule that allows you 2 extra hours of driving, so you get 13 hours of driving, as long as you still cannot drive past your 14th hour, okay? There are other ways to do that, but this isn't it. We're going to talk about each one individually. This is the adverse conditions exception rule. Now, this is 395.1, Part B, right? I'm going to put down the website on the bottom here so that you can see it, and I'll link it in the description so that you can go check it out yourself. Okay, and I wrote all this down so that we get it all correct. Otherwise, people comment, you made a word wrong, whatever. Now, the DOT continues to say that it's got to be something that is unexpected and unavoidable. Your run has to have been able to be completed in 11 driving hours normally. So you can't just do a longer run and say adverse conditions. You have to have been able to do that run that you were going to do in 11 driving hours, and something unforeseen slowed you down. And that's where we get to the unforeseen. It has to be an unforeseen event. This is straight from the DOT that occurred after the trip started. There has to have been no way for you or the dispatch to have known about it at the beginning of your run. If you knew about it and just take the adverse exception, that's not going to be allowed. Okay, so that means that weather, people always use it for weather. That's probably what most people use it for. Generally is not going to be an actual allowed. Now, people say, well, I've been writing it down that way since 1922 when I drove a horse-drawn truck. Okay, right. That doesn't mean that it's allowed. Cutting corners or trying to get away with something is not a good plan, and that's not what you should be doing. So, weather, there are actually ways. I know drivers, there were just drivers last night in the Loves looking at the TVs, watching the weather on the TVs that they have for sale. I don't know. There's other ways to check the weather. So there's no reason at the beginning of your trip, during good trip planning, that you shouldn't look at the weather. Weather is something that can be known at the beginning of your trip. Now, I guess if you're in Florida and it starts snowing, there'd have been no way for you to know that. It's not something you can be expecting. Okay, and the term in an emergency is defined by the DOT, and they say it does not include the following things right from the DOT. A driver's desire to get home. Oh, I need an extra hour. That's an adverse condition. No. It also, normal traffic, such as rush hour. They're saying that is not considered an adverse event. That is something that you should know about at the beginning of every trip because there's going to be traffic. Mechanical failures are specifically prohibited from being allowed to be used for an adverse event condition. A mechanical failure, even though you didn't know about it, is not allowed under this regulation. Okay, so all we are going to get are these 2 extra driving hours and up to 13 in 14 hours and adverse conditioning. You can make a notation on it in your electronic log. Just hit the button for notation, why you drove over your hours and what the problem was. Now, when I was stopped some time ago in that 3.5 hour delay, I would have been able to use it had I needed it that day, an adverse event, because there's no way to know at the beginning of my trip that there is going to be an accident on my route and it's going to hold me up for hours. So that is something that I could do that day, but didn't need to. But weather, snow, like here, it's been snowing. That's why I'm talking about this. I can't really say, well, because the snow slowed me down, in the Midwest, it's snowing. It's going to snow in the Midwest. So weather is something, there's no reason now that you cannot know what the weather's going to be on your trip, during your trip planning each day before you leave. Okay, so this is the adverse conditions exception for the DOT, so we can get 2 extra driving hours, up to 13 hours in 14 total hours, as long as you also cannot exceed your 70 hours. So this cannot put you over your 70 hours. I should say that as well. So if you're at 69 hours, you're only going to get 1 extra hour. You cannot exceed 70 hours in 8 days under this exception. All right. I hope everyone had a good Christmas, and there's more to come from Trucking Answers.